What if it's a big hoax and we create a better world for nothing? I think I really want to be part of creating that better world.
I was probably the last person I would have thought would have come online and supported this. If this was 7 or 8 years ago, I don't think I would have had the ability to comprehend the seriousness of climate change. It's only from my role on council and what I've learned on council has made that clarity, has made that clear. And I'm quite proud to be a late convert to the whole environmental aspect of living on this planet. 9 of us tonight have the ability to do something that no one else in Glen Eira can do tonight. We have the opportunity tonight to actually make some significant long-term change. 150,000 residents or more in Glen Eira cannot do that tonight. Only the 9 of us can.
I'm Belinda Haydon, a member of GCAN, the Glen Eira Emergency Climate Action Network. I've been worried about climate change for the last decade and campaigning for about the last year. Since lockdown, I've restarted learning my saxophone.
My name is Elinor Hasenfratz. I am the Programs and Communications Coordinator for the Jewish Climate Network. I have been much more aware and feeling the real concern over our changing climate since becoming a mum last year, but I've been peripherally aware but not wanting to look at it for a long time. Since social distancing has set in, I have discovered the wonderful freedom of whacking my toddler on the back of a bicycle and riding around my neighbourhood, which has been just wonderful.
On Tuesday, May 5th, Australia was 54 days into lockdown. Nearly a full 2 months before, on March 12th, the World Health Organization declared a state of global pandemic. Here in Melbourne, where I'm based, the F1 was cancelled, and then schools, along with everything else. Business as usual ceased. But community engagement and organizing on the climate crisis didn't. 54 days later, into lockdown, the Glen Eira City Council in Melbourne's southeast declared a climate emergency. But they didn't just declare it. They also committed to appropriate crisis-level action. Maybe it's easier when you're already in a crisis, and the unprecedented is your daily reality, to recognize your house is on fire and act accordingly. With me to tell this story, leading up to some excerpts from that momentous council session, and the speeches that will surely be highlights of these city councillors' careers in public service, are 2 locals who weren't stopped by lockdown, pandemic, or paralysis in the face of the climate emergency. They got on with it, and share some great lessons on how we can all do the same. You're both sounding really good. Thank you for doing this as well, so short notice, and for having something that you can speak into. It was a miracle a month ago when people actually had a microphone in their house, and I feel like now if you don't have a microphone, you just haven't been able to take part in society for the last month. So it's table stakes now.
Yeah, totally.
What is both of your recording situations like? Well, paint a little picture of your setup at the moment.
Just plugged into my Mac. A few weeks ago I bought some new sound cancelling headphones that are...
Ooh.
It's just more for phone calls and to stay focused. So yeah, that's quite great. And they're Bluetooth, but I find that if I use the wire with the inline microphone, that works quite well.
Yeah, no, you're coming through really well, which is nice. So that's very normal. You're got headphones plugged into a laptop. Elinor, I'm expecting something unconventional from you. I don't know why. Maybe it's all the gardening I see you doing. Just the free spirit you are.
I'm flattered, I guess. No, I've also just got a laptop at a table, but it is a table that my dad built. And it's a Quaker folding table design. So there's no screws or anything in it. It's just made, it's put together with wooden pegs with these bits, and it folds away because we're in a very small apartment, which is cool. And my husband works. He's made a standing desk out of nappy boxes and an upside down Coles basket facing the wall, which is very grim every time I walk in, and he's standing there tapping away in the corner like he's been bad. Yeah, it's a work in progress.
Oh, it sounds like it is working though, and like that's good.
Yeah, it surprisingly is. It's odd how, there's so much to be said about how rapidly this is all changing and what's going to be permanent and what's not. But, we've just kind of fast forwarded through many, many years of changes in the workplace into a couple of weeks. And I guess that's just what happens. It works because it has to,
Yeah, it's amazing, the sort of elegant solutions, like, things like victory gardens and stuff we look back on during, World War II and other times of like, privation and resource scarcity, and what looks like, what an elegant solution to that is simply like, well, when there's no other option, this is what you're left with, and you just have to get on with it.
Totally. Needs must.
Yeah, that's right. To sort of set the stage here, we're in the throes of it, right? We're in the depths, the deep ISO lockdown period. It's like I lose track of the days and let alone the weeks. Are we like week 7, week 8? We're really far into this thing, and during this situation, it seems like for those of us members of the climate community, it's been a bit grim. It's been like attempts at virtual protest. There's been lots of email chains. There's been lots of calls to MPs' offices and stuff, which is really good. But how have you both sort of felt in the last couple months as members of respective climate groups and sort of the broader climate community about how we're able to engage with the other crisis at this time, not just the COVID stuff?
In some ways, for me, it feels quite normal, but in other ways, with regards to getting out and doing climate action, I feel very much hampered and in a bit of a holding pattern. But that said, there's just, as I think most people would know, there's just so much happening online, and to the point that I think that the opportunities are as overwhelming as they were before, particularly to engage in climate action and upskilling and all of that kind of thing is just fantastic, particularly because there are people who were occupied with work that they're not occupied, so they do have time, some people. I'm still working as much as I was, and it's just as intense as it was, but I'm just doing it from a different place. Mm-hmm. So I think things feel very, very similar. It's just the lack of going out and engaging with people and talking to people in the community, and that's a big part of the role that I am aiming to play in this, is doing coordination and engaging with people in the community about their concerns about climate change. So all of that is really not happening very much as it was before. That is completely different, and just trying different ways of engaging and different ways of trying to keep everything moving forward. This kind of crisis in this way, it just demonstrates that we can respond to the climate crisis in an equal way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, well said. So at the moment, there's a lot of stuff going on. There is a lot of ways to use your time, but there's also, on the flip side, there's not as much kind of tangible actions going on. And we're going to get talking here about one particular kind of tangible thing that has recently, as of last night, happened. And yourself, Belinda, you're saying that you've been able to use this time a bit to play a coordinating role and organizing role. We'll talk a bit about what that role is. Elinor, just to get sort of, how's it been going for you during this time with, a young child and everything else going on?
Yeah, it's been really fascinating. And I think people have been saying the narrative has kind of shifted from we're all in this together to actually, no, we're not. Well, we're all in this together, but using a more appropriate analogy of we're all in the same storm, but we're in different boats, to kind of keep an awareness that people are having really different experiences. And I've got a 1.5-year-old, and my partner is working full time from home, and he's actually busier than he's ever been. He's like working after the boy goes to bed pretty much every night, which is like very unwelcome development, I have to say.
Yeah.
You know, for all of the busy, like I'm completely, you know, I'm doing childcare full time basically, which thankfully is a delight most of the time, but it means that I'm getting in my work, you know, just squeezing it in around the edges, which is really difficult. But at the same time, I'm really grateful that I've got a pre-made structure that's unignorable. And I think it'd be really tough if I didn't have Lev. I would just, you know, that feeling of the days melding from one into the other and have I actually achieved anything and when did I last have a shower and all that sort of stuff would just be so much more intense. So I am frustrated on one hand that I don't have as much time to do the work that I want to do, but on the other hand, just really aware and grateful that I've got someone who needs me to look after him and feed him and entertain him all day, every day, basically. It's been so interesting to realise how human I am and how human we all are, and as humans, how like unbelievably mammalian and beyond that reptilian we all are. Like I kind of knew all of this stuff I knew it intellectually about when you're in fight or flight mode and you're in a crisis, you know, our amygdalas don't function in the same kind of way and we're not able to have that higher order thinking and thinking about, you know, things that are far off in the future, which is a huge reason, as I understand it, why people find it so difficult. We all find it difficult to think about climate because it's this invisible, faraway threat until it's not. And all of a sudden, you know, I was like this gung-ho climate warrior just starting to get my life together and going from being a primary school teacher, not really involved in it at all, to moving industries and sort of quitting my job and doing weekly protests and meeting MPs and stuff, to suddenly just not having capacity to think about climate at all. And I knew that was fine and I was very forgiving and gentle on myself. It was really only in the last week and a half maybe that I started to resurface, and I just think that's been really true informally of a lot of people in the climate movement, certainly so some of the informal networks that I'm in.
Yeah.
I think it's tempting to say, you know, you should rest and engage in self-care and da-da-da-da, and that's all well and good, but it often doesn't feel it doesn't actually feel very nice and nourishing to do those things. Sometimes it just feels crap, and it just is crap. So I think that's been true, certainly of my experience. It seems to be true of other people I know in the movement of just, you know, they just got hit over the head with this thing and just I was not able to think about it. So it's actually been such a welcome reprieve to have this campaign come up, which you're about to talk about next, which Belinda did so much work, and the Glen Eira Climate Action Network did so much work behind the scenes to organise. And I feel really grateful personally that I could just jump in at the last minute and have a really tangible goal to put my energy towards, rather than casting around for which of the myriad of unsolvable things am I going to try and solve from my living room, you know?
Yep.
So, yeah, it's been a wild ride, and I'm just trying to take a step back continually, you know, at the end of every day, just being aware that we're in a pandemic and it's okay if we're not super productive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, both of you, for that very kind of just, that very human sharing of the roller coaster ride it's been for you for the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks. It is hard to actually keep track of where we're at in this. And the high points and low points and everything in between. And I especially love having people on who, like me, kind of don't feel like we're not experts. Why are we the ones being asked to speak about any of this stuff? Is because that's what regular people feel, and that's what relates to people. Is, you know, all the stuff you just said, both you, Belinda, and you, Elinor, that I'm just I'm resonating with so much, and I feel that's my experience too. I connect with that, and I'm being seen. And at the moment, I think the isolation factor is quite big. So any chance we can get to kind of reconnect with our communities is daunting, right? Because like, how do you reconnect with people when you can't physically be near them? It's being with people in a different context. But then when something happens, like last night, and we're just about to start talking about that now, is, oh man, getting to feel that power again of what you can do when you are back with your community and you are acting as a body, and it is empowering again. And kind of that's what I've been missing personally for the last 2 months, is that sense of like, of the power of being able to work with others. ISO has really challenged the ways in which we did that before. And that's why last night is so exciting, that using the tools we've got, that we can act in concert and get some stuff done. So as we record this, it's Wednesday night, the 6th of May. And so last night, Tuesday, the 5th of May, something happened. And I figured, Belinda, you might be a good person here to kind of give an overview of what happened. And I know you're probably going to diminish your role in it. And that's why I'm going to have Elinor then come in and talk about what Belinda did to get this amazing thing over the line. So, Belinda, what happened last night?
So last night, the Glen Eira City Council, a council area in the southeast of Melbourne, home to suburbs like Caulfield and Elstonwick that people might know of, had a special council meeting, and one of the main items on the agenda was action on climate. It was all pretty complex how it went down, but there was a vote on climate action and what kinds of climate action the council would take, and the councillors voted for the most aggressive option that was provided to them, which was just fantastic.
And by aggressive, you mean like the most sort of optimistic vision, the most engaged with the climate crisis.
Correct, yes. So
wow.
Reducing emissions and getting to neutral ASAP for council and the community. There's a lot more detail around that, but that was just so quite mind-blowing that was the really substantial thing that happened, and it was well supported by the councillors. I might need to check, but I'm pretty sure it was 7 councillors who voted for that motion and 2 abstained.
Wow, not a single against.
No, so it was brilliant. And just as an aside, the group that we're involved in, GCAN, the Glen Eira Emergency Climate Action Network, we had a Zoom call going at the same time. So we were watching the live stream and we were chatting and talking to one another at the same time. So it was really lovely to have, like, it was like we were sitting in the room together having dinner and drinks and watching it all happen. And
that community feel.
It really was. And some people invited their friends. So there were some new faces we hadn't met before. It was, people were taking bets on what was going to happen next. And, well, not bets literally, but it was
friendly wagers.
Friendly wagers. It was just really good, and the analysis that was going on. And so the last item for that agenda was whether or not the council would declare a climate emergency, and that is the specific thing that our group have been campaigning towards, is the declaration of the climate emergency. So we know that council emissions really contribute to about 1% of the emissions in the council area. So it's a community where we need to get the most change. And, you know, our sense is that if we don't declare a climate emergency, then how do we send a really strong message to people in the community that we are in a climate emergency, everybody needs to know, and we all need to do everything that we can to avert this crisis. So there was a really good and long, robust debate. Elinor might have some more to add, but I was blown away by Dan Straight, Councillor Dan Straight. His very passionate arguments about why we should declare a climate emergency, all based on the science. You know, we don't need to be denying science. We need to listen to the science, and we need to get the community on board. It would be wonderful if we could share a clip of that as part of this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and eventually it came to the vote. The councillors indicated which way they were going to go. So, and I went into this meeting thinking, this is not going to happen tonight. This is just one step in the process, and we're going to keep needing to work and keep building relationships with councillors in the community so that we can get this happening. And in the end, it was 5 councillors who voted for the motion, 3 abstained, and 1 was against. And so they voted to declare a climate emergency.
Wow. And going in, you would have put the chances of that happening at 0%?
50 maybe. I was very much not really sure about what was going to happen.
Not to make a wager on it or anything.
Yeah. No. But I'm reasonably new to the community. I don't know the council that well. I don't know the community that well. So given what I'd been told, that was sort of what I'd gathered. And it was just heartening to see the humanity and the passion and the commitment. And one of the councillors, Councillor Jim McGee, talked about how 10 years ago there's no way he would have voted for something like this, but he talked about how he's witnessed all of the things that have been going on around the country, and how things have changed in recent times. And yeah, as I said, wonderful to see councillors being real humans and not politicians.
Wow. I wouldn't have thought that would be possible. I'm so happy to hear that that's what happened last night. And isn't that a reassuring and positive sign? And I wonder how much this is happening actually in the post-bushfire summer, of course, the famous 2019, 2020, now worldwide infamous fires that we lived through. I wonder how many councils have declared climate emergencies or stopped throwing up science denial reasons for not engaging with the climate crisis. Of course, for the last 2 months, the news has been nothing but COVID, but I really wanted to jump on this story to kind of tell it to the wider climate community, because Glen Eira is a large municipality. It's also, being a seat in Melbourne, it has kind of outsized influence, and I think, somewhat definitely a mixed area, if not, altogether conservative area, but definitely like there's an older demographic and it's, very established. It's an older suburb, older area. This getting declared is a really good sign that, for those of us thinking like, there's no oxygen left in the room right now. There's no way to talk about anything that's not recession or pandemic. The fact that we can get a city council to declare a climate emergency with that kind of ratio of votes is staggering. So well done to GCAN. Well done, Belinda. Elinor, was there anything you'd add to that? And what you took away or what you kind of saw of the story leading up to last night?
So this was my first council meeting. My partner used to work for local council as a planner, and so I just always felt like I would never, ever find a council meeting interesting. Not that he ever bored me with the details. I was just like, surely there is just no world in which I'm going to spend hours on a live stream as a council special meeting. But it was actually enthralling. Firstly, I was really excited at the beginning, and then they ended up talking about dog parks and dog poo for quite a long time. And people from my organisation were also watching, and that was a lovely little, in physical distancing, isolation, bit of connection that we're all on the WhatsApp thread commenting together. That was really lovely. And we kept, have they started yet? I don't want to miss it. And then you launch back in and they're talking about dog poo on the side of the road. It was great. Very Parks and Rec. But once they got going, I agree with Belinda. It was actually really, really startling how well everybody spoke. Again, Dan straight, just from my background is as a teacher, and from one educator to another, because he's a vice principal at a local school, I was just so impressed to hear how clearly he was speaking. And I know that he's also holding the best interests and the wishes of his students, I think, in his heart. And it's really excellent to hear people working in schools really holding that in the forefront of their minds. And again, also Jim McGee was just outstanding. And again, as an educator, to hear him really demonstrate growth mindset and to move beyond politics into I have received the evidence and I have changed my mind was really, really lovely. So I had no idea how it was going to end going in. I was quite nervous, actually. And I was really, really just incredibly pleased. And I know that my other experience in this is as the community, the programs and communications coordinator for the Jewish Climate Network. So my quite small role in this was contacting our member list and interacting with people across emails and on Facebook and encouraging them to call and email and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure all of you have a similar experience, or at least it feels this is true for me, that I get so many emails from so many worthy causes and I never respond to any of them because I just don't have capacity. And I was just so blown away by people on our mailing list responding, not only taking up the call to action, but also this morning when I sent out another email saying, we did it happened. I got dozens and dozens of responses. And I know that the council has received dozens and dozens of responses and calls and emails from people in the community, which was just so heartening for me to know that I live in an area where it might feel sometimes quite conservative and it might feel not quite as crunchy as the inner north, where everyone's, got mullets and blundstones and is very cool and is thinking about climate change all the time, which is a huge generalization.
I don't think ever Blundstones have been accused of being a hippie brand either. Birkenstocks maybe.
Oh, you got to get with the times, Mark. They're all the rage.
Oh, geez. Okay, I'm far behind.
To know that, this is my community, and the people who are deciding on this vote are still people, and they do have their own views. But also, this is local representative democracy in action, and they have listened to the people. Maybe not all of their residents will agree with what they have done, going both ways. But it got through and they represent Glen Eira and that's my neighbourhood and I'm so proud. I'm surprised by how much it actually affected me. When Port Phillip declared and Stonington declared, I was like, yep, great, okay, good. And it did, then I got on with my day. Being a little bit involved at the very, very end of this campaign and then being able to really be swept along by the success. I feel profoundly grateful that people like Belinda and people in that Climate Action Network for Glen Eira have been able to really knuckle down and do the work, and also that people in the climate mobilisation movement have been able to work together to share advice and resources. And I know there are some really excellent people who've helped to get this declaration happening in different councils who've helped with this one as well.
Yeah.
And, that's just what it's all about. There are people coming together who don't know each other, who just have a common cause, and that's been really, really nourishing for me. Yeah, really warmed my heart. So I'm feeling very warm and fuzzy today, which is great.
So the whole day you've just been sort of gliding through the day, just this afterglow. I
have. Yes, and because this is something I would normally advise my students to do, I felt so pleased and I really wanted to mark the occasion. So I actually went, and I know you saw this on Facebook earlier. I actually put on a dress. I took off my pajamas. I put on a dress and earrings, which for someone who's got a 1.5-year-old is a very rare occasion.
I'm surprised you could find them.
Yeah, I know. Normally he would yank them out of my ears. And I went and got someone to take some photos of me. And my brother took some photos of me in the garden observing social distancing so that I could say, hey, we had a win and it feels good. And it's not just in this kind of miasma and fog of I'm just a person and this feels like an unsolvable problem. This is the real deal. And to hear how passionately the councillors spoke about this issue yesterday just made it so much more real for me, that they really took this decision seriously. And they didn't all agree, and I didn't agree with all of them either, but it wasn't just this feels like the next step. It was really a very big deal for them. Sorry, that's my kid.
That's all right.
Very excited to see me. Hello.
Yeah, I'm so happy you did take that moment this morning, Elinor, to do something beyond the wall of text post. We do have fatigue of getting the emails from the good causes because we feel obligated to do something and we only have so much time and there's so many good causes out there. And after a campaign like this, you kind of want to get the story out and get the news out, but you're jockeying for space with other, wall of text posts. And I love what you did, going out to the back garden and just having this impromptu photo shoot, and you can see it on your face, the joy, the civic pride, the hope you were feeling, and happiness over something. And I think that was a really good idea and well worth emulating for other groups as well. So when you've got to win, take that chance to take some photos of your team being human and being happy.
Thank you so much. And I'm so glad that civic pride shows in my face.
It really does.
That's definitely what I was feeling. So it's really lovely. And it's something I've learned from other people. And yeah, I agree. I think we need to, we just have to take the time to celebrate the wins. Wherever we can, bring in the joy where possible.
That's right. And there hasn't been a lot, the climate movement has kind of felt in hibernation for the last 2 months. And that's why this victory is such a big thing for us. It kind of feels like this spark that's going to light up the tinder again. And that's the wrong metaphor to be using in this country, recovering from the bushfire season we've had and that we'll keep having. But it feels like a signal fire. I don't know. I'll come up with a better metaphor. But I don't want to keep you guys much longer because I know this is very impromptu and it's less than 24 hours ago this happened. You've all got evenings to get to, but just really quickly, I want to tell this whole story of how this happened because I know there's lots of people involved, there's groups, there's lots of groundwork. I'm going to pull some clips out from that one particular counselor who you were both really impressed by and maybe have his whole kind of speech at the end of the episode. But I want to put the call out that, for people who are involved with this, get in touch with me, drop an email to hello@climactic.fm. I'd love to help or to make it myself if I have to, but kind of do a full episode about the chronology, the groundwork, how this happens, because I feel guilty because I was the guy who breezed into Port Phillip City Council just about a year ago and said, oh, hey, all the chess pieces are right here. The board is set. Port Phillip should declare a climate emergency. I already know a few of the councillors, and they've been guests on the show. So I, got some signatures, not very many, put it on the agenda for the council, went and spoke for it, and they declared. And I'm not a resident of Port Phillip, and I really, didn't hardly know half the players in that community. And that's not a great roadmap to give someone else to achieve this. Kind of everything was ready, and I just came along and gave it a prod, and Port Phillip fell and declared a climate emergency. I'd love to maybe get from each of you just a couple of key points of what you thought was really effective about what was done in the lead up to last night and what made last night possible. So you had that key counselor who spoke so passionately and articulately, and it sounds like knowledgeably about the crisis. Was he contacted beforehand? How many groups were active? And Elinor, I'll go to you first because I know that the Jewish Climate Action Network.
Jewish Climate Network.
The Jewish Climate Network. You guys were out there mobilizing your members. What did you do that effectively?
Something that I'm really proud of is that everyone on the board of the Jewish Climate Network, when they decided to join the Glen Eira Emergency Climate Action Network, in this particular campaign to declare a climate emergency, all took it upon themselves individually to get in touch with any and all councillors they knew, councillors they didn't know, but to have a personal connection and say, hey, this is who I am, this is what we do, this is why it's important. I think I'm really chuffed with my organisation that they really took it upon themselves to, okay, we're doing this, so let's actually do it. Also, just personally, like when I personally called a couple of councillors, I called their mobile numbers and they just picked up. I was expecting to get a message or a secretary or something, but they were just available to talk, and they gave me the time of day. Even the person who voted against the motion gave me the time of day, and we had a 25-minute conversation, and we obviously disagreed, but it wasn't just a matter of here's my thing and then here's your thing. We actually talked it over, and I learned some new things from speaking to him as well, which was really fantastic. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty chuffed with our little thriving democracy at the moment. I'm not sure about what happened before that though, and as I said, I think there's a lot of work, and maybe a bit like you, Mark, I kind of swanned in at the last moment, and I'm happily lapping up whatever glory I can take. But yeah, it just felt very active. It wasn't just send out an email, see what happens, and then they'll make up their mind kind of regardless of what the community thinks or feels.
Yeah.
Stakes
were higher than that.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a matter of, this is going to happen, how are we going to do it? Working backwards from a success.
Yeah, absolutely, which was excellent. And I really wasn't sure that it was going to happen.
Belinda, for someone who's involved with the campaign for sort of, not just the late stages, saying that we'd love Elinor, for doing the exact same thing in Port Phillip. What was it like kind of seeing the campaign evolve? And were there moments it kind of felt like, this could have fallen over, this could have gone a different way? And if so, how did you kind of save it?
Oh, it totally could have fallen over. And I don't know that we could have saved anything. Well, and I think this, victory is a testament to people working in cooperation and in community. I haven't lived in Glen Eira for very long. This is the first time in my life I've been a ratepayer. Last winter, one Saturday night, I was up late reading articles about the climate crisis, and I was looking at the council website and looking at their sustainability plan. It's like, they're doing some good things, but really it's not enough. They're just tinkering around the edges. Mm-hmm. There needs to be more. Why haven't they declared a climate emergency? And looked up, was there a campaign already going? Did somebody have a petition? So I started up a change.org petition and put it on my email signature and sent it to a bunch of different Facebook groups and so on, and just sort of tinkered along like that. And I went along to the first Monash Council meeting, which is a neighbouring municipality where I work. That motion didn't succeed the first time they discussed a climate emergency declaration. But there I met a whole bunch of people from this fantastic group that had just emerged in the previous couple of months, the South East Climate Action Network. So I connected with them and we stayed in touch, and one of the guys from that group, Asha, connected me with someone from a local environment group. I don't know if you're agnostic or like group names being used, Mark.
No, I love it.
Okay, so it's the Environment Victoria local group. So I was connected with somebody from there, and we had a meeting and talked about what it would take to set up a campaign. That night we had the first meeting. We had 20 people crowded around my small apartment dining table, on a warm January evening. And that's when it all started. So I guess the Glen Eira Emergency Climate Action Network was born, and ever since then we've met every 2 weeks. All of these different environment and local groups, like the Glen Eira Bicycle Users Group, and just some incredibly passionate and knowledgeable people that have been involved. And there was so much energy right from the beginning, and so anytime there's a task to be done, people just do it. There's a fantastic woman, Felicity, from the Stonington Break Free group, and the fantastic passion and energy. They helped us put a website together, and people from the Port Phillip group supported us. So all of these different groups from within the area and outside the area supported us all along the way. We were all so excited when the Jewish Climate Network started, because there was so much energy, so much passion and so much commitment, and so many people who wanted to be involved. And so I would think that really pushed it over the line. But it's also, that work that the councillors have done in council, an incredible amount of work that the council's officers, particularly Andriana, who put into the work for the proposal that went to the council last night. And I think it was all a lot of good timing as well. It was the right time. And lots of emails, some good ideas from people to send out emails to our change.org petition and to our paper petition. So we found out early in February that council wouldn't accept a change.org petition. We needed to have physical signatures and postcodes. Yep.
Oh, okay. So you start from scratch.
Yeah, it's totally starting from scratch. So the very seasoned petition people in the Environment Victoria group hit the streets. I think there was only 3 or 4 days. They headed down to Carnegie Shopping Strip. I did some down in Bentley and also at the Bentley Farmers Market. So just over 3 or 4 days, collected hundreds of signatures. We ended up submitting 618 signatures, I think was the official number that we submitted to council 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
2,000 odd signatures on the change.org petition. Although it wasn't official, apparently everyone at council was watching it. So it's a really, it all culminated to sort of a good result. And even though, the EV group had just sort of done the 3 or 4 days of collecting petitions on the streets before the restrictions around COVID-19 kicked in. So
just under the wire.
Yeah. So it was great that we got those few days in before that all happened. And the last couple of sessions just had to be cancelled. There's lots and lots of work that's very hard to see. That a real community effort.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. And I'm sure for people listening, they'll be heartened to know that, if you've got a campaign like this in progress or even in mind, you can pull together a coalition of groups from not just your area and neighboring areas, but that the climate community is broad and deep. And you named a lot of groups, which I really appreciate. And if anyone listening would like to find out more about those groups, well, just listen back and Google them. Or, get in touch at hello@climactic.fm, and I'm happy to pass along information or make introductions as well. Thank you both so much for your time. I don't want to take up much more of it now. I know you've both got things to go and do, but I feel like that was a really good kind of teaser of how to run a successful climate emergency declaration. And congratulations, both of you, again, for a job very well done, and the whole community.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. The world just got a little bit better.
What follows is a 5-minute excerpt from the Glen Eira City Council meeting, and it was very hard to choose which 5 minutes to use because, honestly, I've never heard a City Council meeting more inspiring, more engaging, and with City Councilors so fired up and passionately speaking about the climate emergency. Honestly, it was amazing to hear. So I really debated putting the whole thing at the end of this episode and stretching it out to be an hour and a half long, or to run that as a separate bonus. And I erred on the side of conservatism, making this a 45-minute or so episode, and putting out a second part, a bonus episode, which is pretty much all highlights of that council meeting. Now, this is a recording of a public meeting. I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to do this, but if anyone knows differently, please do contact me. And another good reason to make it a separate episode is I can easily remove it if this isn't part of fair use of council recordings. But I'll definitely include 5 minutes now to give you a taster, and I highly recommend you go check out the rest in the bonus episode.
Thank you, Councillor Hynes. Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item is 5.2, action on climate change. Councillor Silva?
Most as will see, I think everybody around this virtual table acknowledges the problem of climate change. And I suppose where we differ this evening is in how we deal with this.
Councillor Davey?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will move now part 2 so that Council endorses the development of an environmental sustainability strategy, ESS, achieve carbon neutrality for corporate carbon emissions by 2025 and community carbon emissions by 2030.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Athanasopoulos.
Oh, so where to start? This is big. This has been a lot of work by a lot of people to get us to this point, and it all comes down to this discussion and decision. And I do just want to take a bit of time to share some of the thoughts that have been shared with me. What does it mean? It means carbon neutrality. It's as simple as that. It means net zero carbon emissions by 2025 for council, for our corporate emissions, and 2030 for the community emissions. Business as usual won't cut it anymore. So around this table, we've all said time and time again that we want to be, and we have to be, a livable city. And I think option 1 will give us that future that we want. It falls to us around this table to choose to be leaders in this space, to choose option 1 as it has been put. The quote that sticks with me, and I think Councillor McGee will giggle and smile a bit at this one, is from my favourite little cartoon. It's one I showed Councillor McGee, I think, at the start of this term. And it's an audience listening to a climate summit speaker, and somebody in the audience stands up, looking at a presentation that lists all of the great benefits of responding to the climate emergency that we're in. And the person in the audience is standing up saying, but what if it's a big hoax and we create a better world for nothing? I think I really want to be part of creating that better world and put the motion recommendation to you all around this virtual table tonight for consideration and support.
Councillor Straight.
Thank you, Mayor Isakoff. I think what we have in front of us is a very realistic plan, given the fact that Glen Eira councillors have the responsibility, and Glen Eira Council has the responsibility for the health and wellbeing of Glen Eira residents. There's only so long that we can go for without listening to the advice of pretty much every expert in this field who says that all levels of government need to take immediate action. So right now, the reason why there are councillors who are proposing, and many councils around the world who have proposed, to make the challenge of carbon emission a core priority of council is because it needs to be. The reason why we're proposing this is because without it, we are going to see the figure that we're being told right now is we're dangerously close to a 1.5 degree increase in global temperature. And while most people think, well, 1.5 degrees isn't all that much, for anyone who's done any of the reading on this, they understand that even at that point, that's already destroying most of the coral reefs in the world. That's already increasing our risk of rampant bushfires. That's already increasing our risk of violent weather as a result of that global temperature change. So I think we've passed the point now where a group of councils are going to debate the science. I think we can all agree that the science is very clear. There are no serious environmental scientists out there who are disputing any of this. Long gone is the conversation that, yes, there might be climate change, but humans aren't to blame for it. That conversation's finished. It finished 10, 15 years ago. So now the only conversation is, how much of an effort do we want to put into this? And at the moment, we have before us the ability for Glen Eira to take significant action, not unrealistic action. We're not suggesting spending a huge proportion of council's budget on this. What this option one proposes is that, let's get down to the nitty-gritty of it. When we put out a tender and we want people to tender for different services that council offers, we think that it should be a part of that tender process that those organisations consider their environmental impact and let us know what it is, and can really only seriously put in a tender if they've addressed that. That's what we're asking for. What we're asking for here is the ability to move beyond the low-hanging fruit. Yeah, we've already got solar panels on council buildings. We've already got the insulation in. We've already made sure that our community has, the state government's already assured that they've got LED lighting throughout houses. We've done the easy bits. What this is saying is we are nowhere near reaching the targets that everyone on earth needs to help us reach by doing what we've done already.
Councillor Straight, do you want an extension? You've reached your 3 minutes.
No, thank you. I'll end it there.
Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to Climactic, the flagship podcast of the Climactic Collective, a podcast network dedicated to lifting the voices of the climate community. You can find out more about the people behind Climactic and all the shows we produce at climactic.fm. We are a social enterprise podcast network, and we greatly appreciate your support. You can find a link to our Pozible where you can support us directly in the show notes of this episode or from our website. Thank you for listening, and from the whole Climactic Collective, keep up the great work and take care of each other in these climactic times.
The Climactic Collective.